Hello, hello, wherever you are. This is Dan with Evolve Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about leveraging systems to enhance your life. And I had this idea at the gym actually today. This is why I'm kind of getting into it right now. But I thought this idea of systems and how we have systems all around us in our lives, just pervading our lifestyle, whether we know it or not. um, it's almost invisible, the things that make up what we actually do. And I thought it would be a good idea to dive into systems. What is a system? What does a system look like in your day to day? And how can you ultimately leverage these systems so that you're going about your life in a more productive and meaningful way. And so let's dive into what a system is. Uh, Definition is a set of things working together as parts of a mechanism or interconnecting network. Similarly, you can call a system a structure or an organization, the order of things. Throughout life, we have, a way about going throughout life that is either structured or not structured. There's a process, there's not a process. And people actually either value systems and processes or they don't. And that's very common. A lot of people like to free flow, and some others just need that routine. They need to have a plan. They need to throw everything on their calendar, and that's me. I like to do that. I like to throw everything on my calendar, and I like to rely on tools, ergo systems, which could be a tool. I would like to rely on my tools to help navigate my life better, and uh, I'm going to go into a couple of different ideas here for you as you listen. One is, what is the whole value and unvaluing systems thing? You know, uh, what does it look like to have systems everywhere in our life? Are you aware of your own systems that you've made up unconsciously or not? Um, and what are some examples of systems and what makes a good system work for whatever it may be? Okay, and so I'll start off with some examples of what a day to day system could be. A system could look like your time management system. It can look like how you pack your day together, how you save time. What that's one system. That's one kind of system, right? It's like time management system. You can have a communication system. You have an innate way of speaking with people that you may or may not be aware of, and depending on how aware you are of how you communicate, you can probably break down, or somebody can actually break down how you communicate. It's a system, and I think it's important to realize that as we talk about this, it becomes more and more evident that we have created, as human beings, we just created ways to go about life in different ways, but most of those ways are through systems that work. And there's a difference between something that works and something that's very efficient, like efficiently at that 90 to 99 percentile of efficiency, right? So I'll give you an example. If I have a time management system in place where I want to get through a certain amount of things through the day and then come home by 9 o'clock, in bed by 10 o'clock, and I have all these things happening throughout my day. I have personally, as an example, I have created a system where I know roughly what I'm going to do every day. I try to pre-plan things so I know what I'm going to be doing, and the margin of error for time wasted could be, right. And so a good example of this being time management is a lot of people don't have time managing systems in place, and so they go about their day to day, and they don't track, they don't pre-plan, they don't do anything. They may do it in their head. They may wake up. They may do like the three or four things before bed, write them down. Okay, cool. This is what I have to get to the next day. But odds are, most people don't, live out of their calendar, which is understandable. There's that you're missing out on the vibrancy of life, quote unquote, if, you're just living the life of a robot. I totally get that. So for the example here, my point is we all have systems that we use day to day. Some we focus on, some we don't. That go mostly to the background, to the unconscious. We kind of day to day, situation to situation, put things together so that it can coherently run through its process and work, right? And so that can look like, okay, cool. Well, if I set my day up for success in terms of time management, if I put all these things together in my time blocks, this should be the outcome. And that's kind of the point here, right? Is that you're putting a whole bunch of different points of actions together to create a structure, which is like it's a system, but you're structuring a process together for an outcome. And that's what a system is. A system is here, it's a mechanism, it's a tool to help you to do something over and over again with an expected outcome that's pretty much more or less the same outcome. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you another example. If I can, I'll give you two examples. One with time management. If I can get through the end of the day at 9 o'clock, let's just say that's the goal. The goal is I want to create a time management system, and the goal is to get to all those things in the day and get to bed by 9. Right? If it can execute those goals, those two goals, with 90% or higher accuracy, then that I would think is a successful system. I mean, you could say 80% and higher is a successful system, but we always want to strive for 99%. I mean, nothing's perfect, right? And that's why I don't say 100%. But the idea here is that if you're always focusing on actually being aware of your systems and and kind of fine tuning them and kind of actually being aware of like, okay, cool, this is what's working, this is how it doesn't work. You know, you're not only enhancing the process within the processes within the system, but you're getting more of the results that you actually want. So let's use another example. Let's just say you want to make a lot of friends. Let's just say you don't have any friends and you want to build a network, a social network. Well, part of that is contingent on how you're making friends and then growing that network, right? And so my process here would be, okay, if you want to have the goal being you want to make, let's just say, you want to make friends consistently, build a network of, let's just say, professional networking, right? If your goal is to, with every connect you make, let's just say it actually goes somewhere. All right, let me backtrack there because this is kind of getting more complicated than I expected. Let's just say you're out to communicate better, right? And the goal for the system of communication is to make friends. This is a way better example. If you are not communicating effectively, right, that will show up in the result, right? So if you're not making friends and you're communicating and you're asking yourself, why am I not making friends? It's probably because you're not communicating. And probably other things as well. But for the sake of the example, right? And so what I would do is, okay, cool. Let's take a look at this example of communication. Let's look at all the different components of this system that that you have in place. So how do you talk to people? How is your tonality? How is your level of pitch? How is your energy? How good are you at gauging curiosity and making people feel special, and whatever the variables may be, right? And so it's the variables within the system. It's the process that you're going. It's going through that process within the system that gets to that end result. And why this is so important is because a lot of folks out there, they don't know that most of their life is predicated off of systems, and they don't realize that just tuning a couple things in your system can go a very very long way. And you can, and I would say that it's almost as easy as, hey, look, Joe Smith, I'm having an issue making friends, and I've outlined this process of what I think I do, and I want you to objectively kind of give me feedback. Now you can do this yourself. You can ask friends and family and whatever system it may be. But getting feedback, getting a feedback loop for your system is a good idea. Kind of drawing out what that system looks like for whatever it may be, and then you'll clearly be able to see in real time. Oh crap! This is where I'm failing at making friends in this system. It's every time I go to say hi, I'm not making eye contact, which is one of the variables. And then you can just think about how these things really affect the bigger picture of the outcome you want, right? So I got off on a tangent, just kind of going through some examples of some systems that are practical day to day, right? But systems are everywhere. They're at your workplace. They're in your everyday lives. People end up having systems with a relationship. Repeated behavior and things that end up to XYZ results. You have systems with friends, you have systems with family, you have systems with taking care of your health, you have systems for risk, which is a really big one, right? How we go about risk in our day-to-day lives is a system, and we've trained ourselves to be more or less, at least you would hope, at 50% better at the systems, right? You're functioning in life right now, and so it's safe to say that if you're listening to this podcast, you're definitely over 50% of your systems working in life, and that's good because through socializing and learning and being a human being, we adapt to be better and hopefully be beyond that 50% mark, which is, by the way, 50% success in everyday systems is not good, right? Because that's the probability of the inverse happening is also very high. And so that's why I say the higher you can get to that 99% mark of how you go about life and what you do will make all the difference, right? And so I'll give you a good example of this. I wanted more deep and meaningful relationships with people I know. And so one thing I adopted was that okay, I'm doing pretty good at making friends. I'm doing good at all these other things, but I really want the follow through. I really want to dive deeper and really make these friends I now have and the friends that I have had more special. And so not only is tweaking systems in this example, like socializing, like relationship systems, right? Not only is it beneficial to tweak and to whatever, but to add components that that increase that make the experience of whatever the outcome you want better. And so what I do now is every Friday afternoon I check in with all of my friends, and whether it's through a text or a call, and I try to have some kind of rotation where I make everybody feel like I'm thinking of them, which I am. But it's getting to everybody can be a task sometimes, right? But I've noticed that when I did that, I definitely increased the relationships, the friendships that I had. It became very clear that that was a good addition that made the process that bumped up close to that 99%, right? And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how we could make these systems better, right? So there's all these different systems, right? And every system is going to have different components, right? Not, you wouldn't use the same components that like a communication system better communicate the same way that you would maybe um, time management, right? Two different kinds of systems, two in need of two different kinds of components. So just wanted to get that out of the way. So what makes a good system in any context? Well, all parts need to have the possibility to function and function effectively. Okay. And so there's a rhyme and reason for every part of a system, right? You don't want to just add random things to what you do and hope that they work because that's going to throw off the accuracy and efficiency of the outcome, right? So I'll give an example. If you want to become more social, let's just say you want to become you want to be a better communicator to at of the outcome, make more friends. Okay, let's just say you kind of understand how you communicate with people. You understand more or less getting feedback. Let's just say you understand how you do things. Okay, every part of this process within the system of how you communicate in this example needs to have a purpose. It needs to have a rhyme or a reason. It has to allow itself to get close to the 99% efficiency. And so if you look at your system and you say, okay, well, you know what? My system, it's, 70%, 7 out of 10 people I can make friends with and I can follow up and it's a good experience or whatever. So let me add this one component of, let's just say, hiring my pitch, right? Let's see if I talk in a higher pitch, does that affect my communication style in a better way to make friends, right? So it has to have a reason, right? And if you notice that, and I think it's okay to test the components of your system. And I think I very much encourage that. I think you should A/B test how you do things. And so, if you want to, in this example, tinker with like your pitch in this system of communication to make friends, right? And you notice that, oh wow, people really don't like it when I have a higher pitch when I talk to them, right? Maybe I should maybe I should cut that out, right? Or you notice that, what, I I give people, I over handshake, like I over handshake people when I'm trying to become friends with them. And that's maybe something that was added into your system that was just kind of redundant, right? Because then you might find out that, what, if I just shook somebody's hand the first time I met them and then that's it, right? Or maybe if I don't hug them at the end of seeing them, maybe it would be better, right? So sometimes we include things into our systems that are uh, over fluffing the system. It's like it's not necessary. They're redundant. We all do this because we're not all experts at everything. So we kind of bring things together, and through experiential awareness, we add things up collectively and we throw them into this soup pot of whatever kind of system that we're using, right? And so, in the sense of, like, let's just say communication and making friends, right? You take a look at that, and what could that look like? Okay, let's just say I have the greeting, I shake hands, I have good eye contact. I ask people, their name, and then, and then follow up and remember their name later, and then I ask them, how are they doing, and making them feel like I care, and really understanding that process, and really breaking it down to what are those things on the micro that are building up to this experience, right? And I think this is really important to notice because we have so many systems on autopilot that, if you ever, it's like walking into a house and every room is dirty or somewhat dirty, and all it needs is a little bit of cleaning, a little bit of like window shine, maybe, some furniture needs to be replaced with different furniture. Reevaluating your systems is a very big deal because it's how you go about life, and it goes, and that's directly correlated with your results, and what you're looking to aspire to get out of life. And so if you're looking to get a lot of friends, let's just say through the context of this example of communication, if you've never looked into how you communicate, and your shortcomings and your strengths and your process and all those things, if you don't understand the system of how you communicate, and you've just been doing the same thing over and over again, well, yeah, you're going to get the same results, right? And maybe you want better results, and this is the situation that you do, because now you're looking at how you communicate, and you're saying to yourself, you know what, I want to be a better communicator. I want better qualitative friendships and relationships. Let's see what's here, right? Let's look under the hood, right? And it's okay to look under the hood. It's encouraged to look under the hood, guys. I encourage it. Now, I'm not saying go crazy. I'm not saying self-analyze everything that you do under the sun and become a robot. But what I am saying is, take a couple of minutes, maybe every other day. Maybe you want to take this more seriously. Conduct an hour to kind of like dive into these things. The idea here is, I went on a tangent again, but the point here is, when you look at your process, when you look at the processes that make up the system, you know, all of those components of how the system works should should have a reason to exist within that system. You shouldn't have anything extra, and every component should have the possibility to function and function effectively, right? And if it doesn't have the possibility to serve the system, then it shouldn't be in the system, right? So that's one point that I wanted to touch on. The other point that I wanted to touch on is every part of a system should be and is designed to follow through a repeatable outcome. And so if you have things that you do within a system and it's not repeatable, whereas the component that you're using, and let's just use this example of communication. Let's just say there's a component where it throws in a random curveball every time you're trying to make friends. Let's just say you do this weird thing, you make this weird joke, or like whatever, you have like a thing, and it's just a curveball in the system. And we all have these, right? We all have our own things, right? Like in terms of communication. Um, so my point here is, if it's not a reliable example, is if it's not reliable the for the system to be better successful, for the outcome to be repeatable. So the point is, if the goal is to make friends, and you have something that you notice in your system that is just, it's gonna, every time it gets to that point, apart within that system, it will just give you haywire results. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for components that, when executed, when projectiled into life, right? When you do the system, they should be repeatable, they should be efficient, they should be reliable in the execution of how it ends up with the outcome, right? And so it depends on what kind of system it is. If you have, the curveball in this example, right, of communications, everyone has their own things. Like maybe you have like your own quirks. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is, you're doing something. The system specifically has something where it's just giving you unreliable results. You want to minimize those, and you want to maximize ones that will lead to more of the result that you want. Okay, and that one was, every part of a system should be and is designed to follow through with repeatable outcomes. Repeatable outcomes. Okay. Next point I have here is, systems take a minute to get up and running, but once they are, they work. Right. So here's the thing. The big picture here is, a system is only as useful as it is in motion. Okay. If you don't, if you don't ever get out of the house, and you don't talk to many people, you talk to one person a week, or you don't talk to anybody a week, how sharp are your communication skills going to be? If you don't keep in motion the system that you want to use, you're going to have to jumpstart it. You're going to have to lawnmower that thing. You're going to have to rev it until it starts going again. And that takes time sometimes. And I think a lot of people don't realize this, but we, because our focus changes, what we focus on changes throughout time. Some systems kind of get left in the dust, and they get dusty, and we have to brush them off, and we have to restart them and relook at them, and say to ourselves, okay, is this, I'm going to go back into doing this one thing. Is this viable? Will this work? Right. So my point here is, you know, systems that have been running are more effective than systems that are just getting off the ground. If you're, I'll give you an example. If you've never really um, time managed before, right, and you start to create a system for time management, yeah, it's not going to be the best off the gate, out of the gate, right? It's going to be, you know, it's going to be where it is on the percentage of success. If your outcome with time management, if it's not meeting those outcomes, then yeah, okay. But once it's up and running, once you really start getting the structure of it down, and you have the structure down, and you've organized everything time wise, um, that's when you really start to see the results, and the everything coming together, right? So my advice to you guys is, if you're re-looking at something, even if you're refreshing a system that you use, um, if you're refreshing a system, in how you do something, whatever it may be, give it time to really get going, right? It has to like go from 0 to 60, right? It has to get to 60 before it really starts to cruise, right? And that's kind of the point here. um, and listen, not every system is perfect, right? Your focus, though, again, is that you know getting the machine up and running, the system up and running. Your goal is to always make things a little bit better. If that's that's the idea with systems, right? But it depends on the system. Maybe you're at 85%, and that's good enough, right? You're getting the results you want. You don't need to change much about it. um, it is what it is there. But fundamentally, systems are only as good as the energy you put into them, and the modifications that you do, and testing those modifications, and getting the feedback to make them better. And so I want to talk a little bit also about how people value and do not value systems. Okay. If you're somebody, ironically, actually, like me, who doesn't really appreciate systems, I'm kind of one of those people where I I do it in the background, and I don't like to front facing systematize things. I do that. I do it in the sake and argument of productivity and utility. But if you're one of those, those people who value systems and do not value system and systematizing things, and this comes through a theory I follow in socionics. If you're not in the know about socionics, it's a very cool theory about psychology and functions. But essentially, in socionics, they talk about how you know certain functions are valued and unvalued. In this context, we're talking about systems, and for me, I don't go throughout my life thinking about systems. I'm one of those folks that, I slowly build up a record of all these different experiences, and I put it together somehow in the back of my mind unconsciously. And I go, okay, this is the best way to do things. And I just add on to it over time. And then there are other folks who like really they look at something and they say, I have to understand how this works before I do it. Or something along the lines of needing to understand the system and wanting to get it down, and they don't like adding to it over time. And some people, the system is the system is a system, and it's not meant to be modified, right? So what I'm saying here is, think about your relationship with the systems you do day to day. Think about how you do things. Do you like to think about how you do things in that system of what that looks like, the systems and processes of what that looks like? Or are you somebody that would rather just kind of go with the flow with kind of adding on to how you do things over time? And I'm not saying that we all do or don't do these things, but there's a clear dichotomy of people who value and do not value systematizing life, even to like a more PG level. I'm not saying go crazy, but if we think about this in terms of a spectrum, right, where on one side you have somebody who's just all about systems. They've lived life as a very systematized lifestyle, and somebody who's on the other side of the spectrum who's like the surfer dude, wakes up with the waves and goes to sleep with the night, whatever, I don't know. But my point being here is everybody's going to fall on a spectrum here, but then also everybody's going to be valuing systems and not valuing. And the reason why I think it's important to know whether you value or do not value systems is one, it gives you insight into whether or not you should be more mindful of these systems, right? Of how you do things, right? So it's giving you mindfulness of how you go about life, right? And if you go about life, not under, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, the more you're unaware of, the more you are left to the vehicle of life to steer wherever direction you want to go, wherever it wants to take you, right? So understanding, your relationship with systems is important because it will allow you to see things through a different lens of, oh wow, I'm just letting this part of my life go awry because it's not systematized in whatever kind of way, right? Or reviewing at least how you do things, right? And so my point here is, talking about this in terms of a system is more technical way of talking about how we go about life, and what that looks like on more of a mindful and um, more interactive way. How do we interact more with how we do things, right? And it's taking a look under the hood. It's understanding the components of whatever it may be, and understanding that the results that you have today, everything that's happening to you, is the byproduct. The outcomes are the byproduct of the system which you created, whether to your knowledge or not. And and that's what it is. I think that if you're somebody that doesn't value systems, it's a little bit harder because you just don't want to kind of review those kinds of things. You don't see the value or necessity. And I listen. I get that. I'm right there with you if you're one of those folks. Um, I want things to be. I want things in my life to be efficient. I want there to be, I want there to be I want to have time saving tools. I don't necessarily want to know what the systems do and all that. I just want my life to be easier, right? But some folks, if you're one of these individuals who is already kind of on this path of, yeah, man, I already I already have these systems. I'm more aware. Hey, power to you, right? And so hopefully this podcast comes to you, with maybe a different perspective of how to go about your systems, or maybe it's just to make you more aware of, hey, maybe I should just take a look, of some things that I do in my life, and maybe I can do them differently, right? Because listen, the best thing you can do at this point is, with this idea of leveraging the systems in your life, enhancing your life. That starts with being aware of them. It starts with understanding how these systems work. It understands, and it starts with what results are you getting from these systems that are currently in play, and are you happy with those results? And odds are, if you're into enhancing your life and becoming a better you, that you're not satisfied with where you are, and that you want to know more or less what's under the hood so that you can change things. And I think this is a way more practical approach to personal development with systems, because this just involves taking a look under the hood, seeing what's there and changing it up, versus taking new information from other folks, from whatever you're listening, whatever you're digesting data wise throughout your day, and throwing more um, wrenches into the system that may not need to be there. Like I said earlier, you know, you only need components in the system that are going to get you the results you want. And so if you throw in extra things into the system, it may or not be as successful as you want it to be. And so I would just say, for all those folks out there, be conscientious, if anything. Be conscientious of how you change things up. There's a lot of information out there. Sometimes things sound like a good idea and they're not. So it's good to get feedback from people you trust to kind of see what that looks like. Maybe outside of how you do things, kind of see how it looks like in other places in your life, or in other people's lives, for that matter. Um, it's very important to, you know, approach changing systems carefully, because once you have a system that you get used to, then you just do it all the time, right? And so, I'll give you an example. I started eating an onion every day because of some health benefits. But like, what if I just, you know 10 days from now, it just started not benefiting my life because I just didn't do the due diligence of the research to to kind of understand what an onion a day would do to my body every day in terms of health, right? In terms of modifying my health system, right? So it's really important to carefully review how you want to change things for yourself, and to get feedback, to understand, what the possible outcomes could be if they are different from the outcome that you want. Very important. Um, so anyway, that's systems in a nutshell. If you like this podcast, please follow the podcast, whatever that looks like, on whatever platform that you're looking at. Follow me on social at Daniel Speiss, or Evolve, Learn, Live, Thrive on YouTube, or wherever. If you like this format of how I am doing the podcast, please let me know. Give me a review if you like the content that I'm providing. It will only help reach more people, more folks like you who want to better evolve. I'll see you next time, guys. Have a good rest of your day.